Hello, Year 2, how are you? And welcome to this week's RE lesson. So, last week in RE, we started looking at the religion of Buddhism. I wonder how much you can remember from that lesson, or we'll find out in a minute. Today, we're going to be looking at recognizing different Buddhist symbols, which explain why the Buddha was so special to Buddhists, okay? And by the end of the lesson, you'll be able to look at the picture of Buddha and be able to recognize some of its features and explain why these features are important and what they represent. Okay, but before we do that, let's see how much you can remember from the last lesson. So there are 5 questions here, and they're multiple choice, so you either pick A, B, or C in each question. So number 1, what is the symbol of Buddhism called? Number 2, where did Buddhism begin? Number 3, what did Buddha teach people? Number 4, what did Siddhartha Gautama see outside his palace? And number 5, where was Siddhartha Gautama when he became the Buddha? Okay, so pause the video now and have a go at answering these questions. Is it A, B, or C? Okay, Year 2. So let's see how you got on. So number 1, what is the symbol of Buddhism called? Can you remember? Yes, that's right, it's B, the wheel of life. Well done if you remembered that. Now, number 2, where did Buddhism begin? Was it A, England, B, Spain, or C, India? Yes, that's right, it was C, India. But even though it started in India, people all over the world today follow the Buddhist religion, okay? So even though it started in India, it's not just in India today. And number 3, what did Buddha teach people? Buddha taught people the noble truths. There were 4 of them, weren't there? I wonder if you can remember what they were. Now, number 4, what did Siddhartha Gautama see outside his palace? Was it A, people suffering, B, body trees, or C, statues of the Buddha? Yes, that's right. It was A, people suffering. He saw sick, old, and dying people, and that was the first time he'd seen people suffering, and that is why he decided to go on his journey as a poor man. Okay, and then number 5, where was Siddhartha Gautama when he became the Buddha? Was he A, in his palace, B, under a body tree, or C, on the streets? Yes, that's right, it's B, he was under a body tree, and he was meditating. Now, do you know what meditating means? It's when you focus on an object, a thought, or an activity, and it helps to clear your mind and calm you, relax you. Can you see in the picture of the Buddha statue that the Buddha is sitting with his legs crossed and his eyes closed? Well, that means that he's meditating, okay? He's trying to relax himself and clear his mind, maybe of all the worries he has. Okay, so let's move on to today's lesson now. Well done if you got all those right. But if not, don't worry. You can always go back and watch the video from last week and then try and answer these questions again. Right, let's move on to today. So here you've got 3 pictures, and in each picture there is the statue of the Buddha. Now, do you notice any interesting or unusual features on the Buddha? What can you see in the pictures? Okay, so pause the video now and have a good look at the pictures. Can you notice any features? Okay, Year 2. Did you manage to notice any features? Well, let's see what I noticed. So here's our picture of the Buddha, and the first feature that I noticed was these curly shapes on his head. Can you see them? Oh, I wonder what they might represent. Now, the second one, can you see the mark in the middle of his forehead, in between his eyebrows? It looks a little bit like a teardrop. Yes, so I noticed that, and that's called the third eye. Now, what do you think the next thing I noticed was? Yes, I noticed the bump on the top of his head. Can you see it? The little bump that goes up at the top of his head? I wonder what that represents. Do you know? And the last one, can you see his earlobes? What do you notice about his earlobes? Yes, they're very long, aren't they? Wonder what that is. Okay, so now you know the 4 different features on the Buddha statue. His curly shapes on his head, his third eye in between his eyebrows, the bump on the top of his head, and his long earlobes. I would like to pause the video and see if you can think, what do these represent? Why are these different features important? Okay, pause the video now and have a think. Okay, so now we're going to work through them one by one and find out if you were right, if you guessed correctly what the different features represent and why they're important. So the first one is the bump on the top of his head. Now, what do you think this might represent? Well, it represents that the Buddha was wise, okay? He was very smart. He knew a lot about everything, okay? So that is what the bump on the top of his head represents. And the fact that he's meditating brings us back to the story of Siddhartha Gautama, how he became the Buddha. Remember, he was meditating under the Bodhi tree. So the fact that the Buddha in his statues is meditating takes us back to that story. Okay, the second one. Can you see the mark on the Buddha's forehead? Can you remember what that's called? Yes, that's right. It's called his third eye. Now, what did you think that might represent? Okay, well, it represents that the Buddha is very spiritual. Now, the spiritual side of you is your thoughts, your feelings, and your beliefs. So everything inside of you, okay? Not what you can see on the outside, but everything that's inside of you. Now, it also represents that the Buddha, because he had a third eye, he could see things and he knew things that normal people wouldn't have been able to know or wouldn't have been able to see. So it kind of links to the bump on his head. Because he had his third eye and he was able to see things that normal people wouldn't, that made him very wise, very smart. Okay, so we've done two. We've done the bump on his head and his third eye. Now the next one, his long earlobes. What do you think his long earlobes represent? Shall we find out? So, as I said, Buddha statues usually have long earlobes. Can you see the long earlobes on the statue of Buddha in the picture? Yes, I can too. And the long earlobes take us back to the story of Siddhartha Gautama. When he was a prince in his palace, he used to wear very heavy earrings, which meant that his ears were pulled down and therefore he had long earlobes. Okay, now, can you remember the last feature that we haven't mentioned yet? So we've done his third eye, we've done the bump on his head, and we've done his long earlobes. What was the last one? Yes, that's right, it was the curly shapes on his head. Now, the curly shapes on the Buddha's head are not hair, and that's because Siddhartha Gautama, when he left the palace as a poor man, he shaved all of his hair off. So therefore, it can't represent hair. Can you guess what it represents though? Well, when Siddhartha Gautama was meditating under the Bodhi tree, it was a very hot and sunny day. So some kind snails came and sat on his head. Why do you think they sat on his head? Yes, that's right. It was to protect him from the sun. So that is what the curly shapes on his head represent. Now, we've looked at the symbols on the Buddha statues. We've looked at his curly hair, well, not hair, sorry, the curly shapes on his head because Siddhartha Gautama didn't have any hair when he left the palace. So the curly shapes on his head, his long earlobes, his third eye, and his bump on the top of his head. Now, what do you think these features tell us about what the Buddha was like as a person? Pause the video now and have a little think. Okay, yeah, too. So the symbols, the different features on the Buddha statues represent the fact that Buddha was special, okay? And they also retell the story of the Buddha, so how Siddhartha Gautama became the Buddha. As we said, the curls on his head represent the snails that were sitting on his head while he was meditating under the Bodhi tree to protect him from the sun, as well as his long earlobes, which represents the fact that Siddhartha Gautama, when he was a prince in his palace, used to wear very heavy earrings. So that makes us think back to that story, the fact that they are features on the Buddha statues. So this is your task, okay? You're going to have a picture of the Buddha on your worksheet, which is Year 2 RE 18th of January resource, okay? And what you need to do is label the different features of the Buddha. So can you remember what they are? Then after you've done that, I want you to explain what the different features mean. So what do they represent and why are they important, okay? So before you go off and do that, I've got one last question for you. So Buddhists, as we said last week, do not believe in one God who created everything, and they do not worship Buddha either. So if they don't worship Buddha and they don't believe in one God who created everything, why are these statues of Buddha so important? I would like to pause the video and have a little think about this question. Okay, year 2. So Buddhists don't pray to Buddha, okay? They don't ask him for help, but they do visit the statues, which are in temples. And when they visit the statues, they meditate. So they sit and they think and focus on an object, a thought, or an activity to help clear their minds and keep them calm. Okay, so they meditate when they go to the Buddha statues. And they also show thanks for Buddha for teaching them the Buddhist way of life, so for teaching them the noble truths. Now, can you see in the picture those sticks that are burning? Do you know what those are called? They're called incense, okay? And people burn incense, which is a material used to produce a strong smell, okay? And it's a very pleasant smell when it's being burnt. So they light the incense to create this pleasant smell, and that probably helps them to meditate, okay? Helps them to relax. And they also give offerings to the Buddha statues of flowers, okay? So that is what they do when they go to the Buddhist statues, because as I said, they do not worship one God who created everything, and they do not worship the Buddha. Okay, so what I'd like you to do now is have a go at your worksheet. Remember, year 2 RE, 18th of January resource, okay, and label the different parts and tell me why they're important and what they represent. Okay, year 2, I look forward to seeing you in our next RE lesson. Bye.